The Generator.
The Generator.
The Generator News. The Generator.
The Generator News.
By selling off our country at inflated prices, it gives us a delusion that we're actually doing well.
Energy matters.
Living sustainably. A lifetime of war. Climate chaos.
Local food action.
The computer models used to predict climate chaos have not taken Arctic forest fires into account.
A lifetime of war.
Marine wash. Energy matters. Sustainable settlement. Local food.
Climate chaos.
The Generator.
Then I knew it was not lying. Her telephone's opera house favorite melody.
Well, welcome back to the Generator, Your Life, Your Planet Q&A. Ask us any questions that you have. We've got a few questions lined up. But while we were watching Bowie in that 49-year-old clip of 5 years, and hopefully we do find ways to have more than 5 years left, we were picking up on Eric's point about behavioural change. And even though we know when things are not good for us, we find it very hard to take the actions that we should. And that's an area of study of yours, Leigh-Chantelle.
Yes, well, I've just finished my Bachelor of Psychology honours and I'm about to start my PhD, and I'm focusing on behavioural change and technology acceptance of autonomous vehicles and blockchain technologies. And a large majority of that and a large majority of the stuff we learn about in psychology is behavioural change. So when Eric was saying before, people know they shouldn't be smoking, should be eating better, should be exercising more, but how do you get people to actually do something about those things? And like your book is all about as well, there's little tips to do. There's little things that are reminding you. It's changing habits. How do you change those habits? You stack habits. Like you do something in the morning, so you add something else that reminds you to do that, and you keep doing those.
Now, I mean, obviously I thought a lot about that kind of thing in the book, and I've tried to craft the book to remind people that they do have options and that those options aren't always painful. But Eric's point is that we prefer pleasure, we prefer convenience, to your point, Helen. Yeah. And so we will generally take the easy way out because that's how we are hardwired. Yeah. And so that's why we need the systemic change. Do you think that's true, or does your behavioural research indicate that as a society we can manage and organise ourselves better?
I'm all for dismantling the systemic structure and starting again, but you can do a lot just on your own. So I think a lot of people maybe need to just take ownership and just do what you can first, because that's a great step. It also makes you feel that you can achieve a bit more, and then you just find all those like-minded people and work together to get stuff done. So I think that's really interesting and necessary. But yeah, I think also it's social norms, like who's around you. If you're seeing people all the time that are just, destructive of the environment, don't care necessarily about their health or animal welfare or even the environment.
Or drive to the toilet 15 times a day in the camping ground, drive so resolutely, or sand tobogganing down sand dunes that have got big signs saying, do not.
But it's mindful. It's for you personally, how to be more of a mindful person. So like I was mentioning before about, the digital wellness stuff, or me just in general with making decisions, pause, consider, decide. And that's you taking personal responsibility, which I know not everyone's good with, but you just deciding, okay, I want my universe to be in this way. So I'm going to decide that my action needs to be in line with my values, my beliefs, and I'm going to be doing this, whatever that is, being more vegan, riding my bike to work, reading more articles, signing off from all my social media more. Like it's more those sort of small things.
Okay, so that's the advice that we can give to individuals.
Yeah.
As a society, though, don't we have to take some responsibility for the individuals that won't take responsibility for themselves?
Yeah, so you started actually a conversation saying, well, individuals prefer convenience. is it really, or why? I think that convenience is a response to the pressure of the system, right?
Yeah.
For example, when we had lockdown, or my family is in Europe, people loved, cooking and, enjoying that time,
That's right, all the basics like flour.
De-accelerate the lifestyle. So, imagine, and I'm a supporter of the basic income and maximum income, So if people would have this income, they could actually have more time to do, to develop a culture or any other thing that could actually enrich society. And imagine if, I am also all about that, not using GDP as index of economic prosperity, but imagine if our nation would be based on how much free time we would have. If prosperity of a nation is based on how much free time people would have, then people would not, buy processed packaged food and all that stuff. So I don't think that the response is, people are lazy, people prefer convenience. I think that the structural system that oppress the working class and the poorer class is driving us to consume convenience to respond to the stressful society.
The comment about time is interesting. There was a science fiction film recently where people had a clock tattooed on their arm that showed how much time they had. And if their clock ran to zero, they died. And the poor parts of the world, everyone had very little time and was in a hurry. And in the rich parts of the world, everyone was relaxed and sat around drinking coffee and sparkling water.
Well, time is a finite resource. It's not a renewable resource. It's a finite. We have a certain amount of time in our day to decide what we want to use that time for. So this is where we need to actually go, okay, is there one action I want to do in this book, and just dedicate the time to that one action. I think we overwhelm ourselves thinking we've got this massive big problem out there and we go, I can't do anything about that, it's just me. Well, actually, just you multiplied by 25 million people in one area is an absolute massive change. So just pick one action and just dedicate a little bit of your time. I know we're all stretched for time and we call it the attention economy of trying to get our attention. So just pick one thing and just focus on that and do it well. Other people will see what you're doing in your sphere of influence and they'll go, oh, look at that. She's growing that herb, or she's walking more, or they'll watch what you're doing, and then by your actual behaviour, you're affecting someone else's change. And that's what I've noticed with Spare Harvest is when people share what they're growing, like I have people come to my yard to pick up the mandarins or the cucumbers, they usually walk away with cuttings, they walk away with knowledge, they walk away with conversation. I've seen like-minded people create friendships from this, there's even one lady who said, this is the dating app for you. You love gardening. This is the perfect place for you to find a mate who loves gardening. I mean, COVID was about us getting back to basics. We had time. See, it comes back to time again. We had the time to actually grow more. The love for money, you could not buy seeds during COVID. You could hardly buy a plant in COVID. You could hardly get any soil in COVID. Everything was shut down.
So as well as being an indicator of how behaviour changes, and we're not obsessed by convenience when we don't have to be, COVID also is an indicator about those aspects of behavioural change. And many of the debates that went on during the intense period of lockdown and are still going on about border closures and so on now, is it more important for us to make sacrifices for the common good, or should the common good come down a little bit so that we can be more free and the economy can flourish?
Well, I'm all for, like short-term pain for long-term gain, and particular when it's something that is like a really small thing that you can give up that can help a lot more people. And I know not everyone agrees with that, but I definitely think that the more we do our little bit, which whether that means not going to the beach every week or not going to your favourite shop or going out all the time like you used to, you can do those little things to help the greater good. Because, I'm all about that. Like, I think the more people do that, the more people put others before themselves, the better the world will be.
But it's interesting how you frame it, because I feel, again, this is how capitalism put this narrative in us. I don't see it as a sacrifice. Why would it, it seems like that living within the ecological boundaries and in a social justice society, it seems such a painful thing, a sacrifice. It's not. Actually, I would say go more to the beach and less to supermarkets, because you consume it. So it's really interesting how we got into this narrative that we need to decolonize our mind, thinking that actually doing the good thing is a sacrifice.
Okay, so that's an interesting point. Let's go through a work example. When I first sat down to start writing, it was in a very, very hot period about this time last year, and I was going to the library to work, and I thought, well, I will ride my push bike to the library because I should. Yeah. Because it's, better.
The right thing to do.
It's the right thing to do. And it was so hot that I would arrive at the library just sweating, and I was cursing.
And how productive were you in that state when you were in the library?
It was terrible. I mean, it was great to arrive at the library in the library's air conditioning, but one day I got in the car and I drove to the library and I parked, and I thought, this is the challenge. Because I felt that it was a sacrifice to ride the bike through 38-degree heat and 75-degree humidity.
But that is a sacrifice because we forgot that we have a government and public spending. And I drove here my car today because the bus was just taking an hour and a half otherwise. And my car was just 20 minutes. So why don't we reclaim back public transport that is affordable, efficient, that is connected? So
we can't look at ourselves and the sacrifices we make in isolation. We have to look at the systemic influences.
Exactly, because if 10 of us sweat on the bikes, when we go home, the last thing we want to do is to fight the system because we're exhausted, right? So we buy some entertainment online and we consume social media.
We haven't got the energy.
And so we become the product, right? But what if, we fight as a class saying, well, this route needs more buses and we vote for politicians, so we re-question democracy. So that spending goes for the,
Well, one area where we have definitely become the product is the digital world. So do you want to talk about that in respect to digital wellness?
Yes, well, we're all just little rats on the little machine just running, and we're talking about time and everything like that. We all have the exact same amount of time, but we just keep adding all this stuff into our lives. Oh, I have to be on this, I have to be on that, I have to be on that. And, it's just very interesting to me that a lot of people prioritise being on Facebook and passive scrolling as something that's really important in their life. And, like I was saying before with the mindful and conscious use of things and decisions you're making in the world with technology, it's great if you are being active and you're being social and you're getting your social interactions online and you're interacting with people, learning something, there's a bit of a give and take. But if you're just passively scrolling through social media, you're not actually getting anything from that. And this is where you're getting lots of anxiety and depression, which could also have existed before. Not saying that that's a cause.
So you're not getting anything from that, but you are actively giving something. You're giving data to those companies that are making money from it.
Yeah.
What about with things like Google Maps, when we use the convenience of Google Maps to get here more quickly because the bus takes an hour and a half? We're giving Google data. So how does that fit into the sort of balance?
Do you need to be using that, for example? Like I try to do stuff where I'm not tracked all the time. And so, for example, if I was going somewhere new, I'd check it out on my computer, and I have a VPN. So I'm checking out where I need to go, and I write down directions like on a piece of paper with a pen. And some of my
old-fashioned thing.
I get a lot of flack from doing that, but it's easy. And I'm not saying I do that 100% of the time. Sometimes when I'm in a new area and I just want to go somewhere quickly, then I'll do it. But I'm very conscious and mindful of not doing those things. So I have digital boundaries in place that I can't just do that. So, there's more things.
So nominate a digital boundary. How do you know that you've crossed the boundary and that it's wrong for you?
Well, it depends on the person, obviously. But to me, one of my things is that I don't want a lot of my stuff to be tracked online. So I would never.
Sounds like I can never get hold of you.
So, like, for example, if I do have to use my GPS to go somewhere, I would turn it on just for that and then turn it off as soon as I finished.
And I'm guessing you don't get the monthly update from Google that shows you every step you've taken and every kilometre of road?
No. I would never even sign in on my phone with Google. I've never signed in with Facebook or Google with my phone. So there's just things like that you can do. They're easy
and they're conscious decisions. Like with Spare Harvest, when I started Spare Harvest, the thing was signing with Facebook.
Yeah.
And then I started getting some feedback from people. And then when I redid Spare Harvest, the new platform, I got rid of Facebook completely. Definitely. So everyone had to sign in with an email and a password. Yeah. So even as a creator of something, I made a conscious choice then to actually allow people to use an email and a password that would never be tracked.
And that's also the convenience thing we were talking about before. Correct. Because people are putting convenience over privacy. Yeah. People are putting convenience over social justice. People are putting convenience over environmental stuff. So it's just stepping back and going, what am I doing? What are my goals? Am I on the road to achieve?
And that is a creator of a platform. I made a conscious decision to put our members' privacy ahead of convenience.
So as a creator of the platform, there's a number of decisions like that you must have made. The whole concept of a platform allowing us to share things and build community instead of knocking on the neighbour's door is an interesting one. Do you want to just talk to that?
I see technology as an enabler. It's a magnificent thing what we've got with the internet and technology, and we've had some beautiful things that have come out of it. It's an enabler, and if you see it as an enabler all the time, you're making really good decisions and using it as an enabler. But if you start looking at making it like it's a data collection or it's a follower and that's your business model behind it, I think you've lost it. It's no longer an enabler. It's a capitalist mechanism that people are using. So the other thing too is we've got to work with people's behaviours. People are more comfortable now texting someone they don't know for a slight warm introduction to that. No longer can you feel comfortable knocking on someone's door. So we would be nice to get back to where we knock on people's doors, but half the time they're not home anyway because they're at work. But,
they don't have to, or you can't get up through the high fence and they automatically can drive out.
So messaging on the platform is something people are very comfortable doing. So I wanted to make sure that I was creating something within a comfort zone that they had, so they can message a stranger and say, "Hey, Helen, I don't know you from Blue Ra Zoo, but you've got mandarins I wouldn't mind having." And then I go back and I say, "Yeah, I've got these mandarins. Happy to share them with you. Where are you based? You can come to my house or I can drop them off." You're starting to have a conversation in a very safe
So have you got a link to Uber to deliver the carrots and pick up the cucumbers?
No. I want people to meet. That was also a fundamental aspect in building the platform, is I wanted people to meet. I could have put my mandarins down at the front of my driveway and people could have driven past and picked them up, and they could have wasted them because they took too many, or they would have been under the 38-degree heat and got destroyed. I made the conscious decision I would leave the mandarins on my tree, put it out on the platform, and I wanted to meet the people I was doing this to.
And so how do you encourage people to meet when they are using an electronic platform to communicate?
The exchange is the meeting point. The exchange, by actually exchanging it, you actually get to meet it. And even if you don't get to meet, like I had this interaction where I dropped my mandarins off to Natasha. She couldn't get to my place. I dropped them off at her doorstep. I drove past, but I got this beautiful note that afternoon saying, "Helen, thank you so much for your mandarins. It's the only fresh fruit my daughter will have in a lunchbox this week."
Okay.
You know?
So Sabrina, how do you integrate the digital platform into the tool library?
Well, for us, when I started, a lot of people suggested to do a peer-to-peer app, so people can exchange. But I always responded that for the partners and the pizzas, there were apps, but for the tools, they still had to come at the tool library. And for me, the human interaction is important beyond obviously, the well-being that it might create from that relationship, but again, for us, the commons are resources that are, taken care of by the community. There's a responsibility. So, and I feel that in such an individualized society, that human interaction, is important. But I was reflecting on, people scrolling and not taking action. And I've been in this movement, since a very young age. I'm actually born with these problems already, inherited all these issues. And I was thinking that another thing that and I'm very self-critiquing, also my own thinking, is that we risk sometimes to blame other people, like, oh, people are too lazy, people are just scrolling. The problem is not them. The problem is the upper class, the elite, or the problem are those corporations, those platforms that are not paying their taxes. Imagine if those corporations would actually pay their taxes, we could have, better, reliable public transport. We would have work less for an income and free up our time. So I think what the capitalism did well is divide us. You're not vegan, you're vegan, you just plant mandarins, you just like carrots. While in reality, the 1% of the elite is not, is evading in terms of people, but also corporation-wise. They're evading taxes, our government are not independent bodies anymore. And again, democracy, we can't take for granted democracy. I think it's a system that we need always to reassess and fight for, because we are seeing that in many countries, including Australia, democracy.
So there are individual responsibilities. Then there's the community that we form together and can rely on. And then there are those systemic problems that shape all of that.
Yeah.
And the 1 per crore, not the 1%, it's 1 in 10 million that make the decisions that own half the wealth, that set those systemic problems. But it's not all their fault. I mean, when I try and get together with my community and do community things, it's a really uphill battle, and it's when there's a lot of mistrust. And when you get past mistrust, it can be really, really boring. They're not the kind of people that you might select to have fun with. So there are those sort of problems with behavioural change as well. We'll just go to Leigh-Chantelle.
Well, I was going to say, with the systemic stuff, like I said, I'd love to smash the systemic sort of stuff down, but you have to keep in mind there's things that exist. Like we were talking about transportation before. I'm totally obsessed with trains. And if you think about back, I think it was Clive, I can't remember the mayor's name at the time, one of the bridges is named after him. He got rid of all the trams in Brisbane after a fire, okay? And then he brought in the buses. There was no forward thinking, as we see all the time with politicians. So now they've congested all the roads with more buses, more cars, stuff like that, when we could have had amazing trams and train systems in Brisbane. So now we've got that. And this also relates to technology. Now we've allowed your Amazons, your Googles, your Facebooks, all that to have all this massive control. So now it's hard to then go, but this is where we want to be, because there's so much more work to get something to change. Brisbane now is not actually able to have great public transport because the actual areas don't exist anymore. They're not there. They've been damaged.
Yeah, so Sydney did the same thing.
Yeah, Sydney. Melbourne's one of the greatest examples in the world, for example. But technology, how do we get that to change when they're not taxed? They give a heap of money to be elected or to do whatever they want. So it's just a massive uphill battle.
And that's where democracy is a constant and ongoing project that involves our individual responsibility. Well, we're getting to the end of our half-hour Q&A. Any final comments from any of you? Let's start with you, Helen.
One action. That's my comment. Just choose one action that you can make a difference, and then hopefully once you've got that bedded down, you can look at a second action. Don't overwhelm yourself. Find one action.
Sabrina.
I will invite and repeat myself. What can we do together? And maybe invite you to read more about degrowth alternatives and to decolonize our mind from the current system, to think, about new ways to organize society.
Leigh-Chantelle.
I would just say lead by example, be consistent, just do that over and over. And I believe change is coming from that. And just be a critical thinker. Don't just believe it because you've seen it on TV or your mates, friends, girlfriends, whatever's told you. Really search for the true answers.
And I'll take the final word, share. If we share what we have or what we know, then we're creating that community, and that's the basis of building trust. Thank you, and don't forget to buy a copy of Your Life, Your Planet, little plug there at the end. And thank you, everyone, and thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
delusion that we're actually doing well.
Energy matters.
Living sustainably.
A lifetime of war. Climate chaos.
Local food action.
The computer model used to predict climate chaos had not taken Arctic forest fires into account.
A lifetime of war.
Marine wash.
Energy matters. Sustainable settlement.
Local food.
Climate chaos.